Hey everyone, it's Keith, and I am in Hawley, Massachusetts, near the Berkshires, and it is a beautiful Columbus Day weekend. We got leaves on the ground and leaves in the trees that are turning colors, and it's a great day to be out for a ride in my dual sport. The video today, I'm going to talk a little bit about ghost towns and what life was like 150 years ago in New England. And I'm in Hawley as a perfect example of that. Behind me is a charcoal kiln that dates back to 1870. Where they basically built this giant stone structure, would light a fire inside and create charcoal. Now, the town itself here I'm in now is one of the smallest towns in Massachusetts today. It's actually only about 330 people live here. Back in its heyday, maybe around the time of the Civil War, there were probably about 800 to 900 people. So the town has lost 2/3 of its population since the Civil War. Now, to understand why, let me take a couple seconds to talk about history of New England. Now, back about 150 years ago, most of New England was clear-cut. In fact, there was probably only about 30% of the land was forested. Today, in contrast, about 80% of New England is forested. So where I am right now was completely cut for lumber, for fuel, building materials, ships, paper, whatever. And there wasn't a whole lot left of the forest. And people practice agriculture up here. I'm right now on about 1,800 feet above sea level, which is pretty high for this part of New England. It gets cold up here. Well, people were farming everywhere, including on some of the steepest hills you'll find in this region. Everything was pretty bare. Well, what happened was, after the Transcontinental Railroad was completed in 1869, a lot of people began to move out west. The land here, hard to believe people were farming up here. It's extremely rocky, it's remote and isolated. There's no railroads that run up here, and it's hard to get your stuff to market. Well, once the West opened up, land out there became pretty plentiful. It was flat, there were no rocks, and you could farm hundreds of acres at a time. So what we're going to do now is travel through Hawley, some of these roads that are left of the town. All that's left are some dirt roads and paths. The WR250R is really the perfect bike to get through. You're really not going to see any cars in here at all. Colors are great. Maybe we'll see some cellar holes. I know in here is a cemetery that I've stopped at before. We can take a look at that and just give you a sense of what Hawley is like today. You can see the stone walls running down along the old road. Now more people come in here as a snowmobile trail. And we're right off the main road, and there's a cellar hole right here. There's a real good cellar hole right here, just across the street from where I was. Now, this structure is kind of unique, and it's a large hole, but it's got the stone column in the center. So I don't know if this was a barn or a house or what. Not really clear, but it's obviously been abandoned for a long, long time. Yeah, he's really stuck. Looks like we're blocked with the tree. So here's my GPS track. I came in here, is right around where the beehive kiln is. Came down this way. This is where the cellar holes were. This is where the tree was down. So I had come down here before, trying to find a way into this area where the tree was down. I came along this paved road, couldn't find any way, and then this is the way. There was that, this is Hunt Road where I turned left, and then I took another left up here. Middle road was closed, but there's this other road here called Halleckville, and I just came down this section. Still not having any luck finding the old cemetery that I've been to before. Well, this is the end of my journey for the day. I finally found it, the old Hawley Cemetery. For those of you looking, it's on Halleckville Road. I pretty much explored the entire Hawley State Forest today. Now, these gravestones, most of them go back around 1860s, 1880s. There's a few that are about 100 years old. And then there's about maybe half a dozen people here who died maybe in the 70s, or there's a few that are actually still alive and waiting to be interned here. You know, you can talk about what the place used to be, and when you ride through the woods, you really can't see anything. In fact, the last few miles, I really couldn't see any stone walls or any signs of civilization. But when you find a cemetery like this out in the middle of the woods, it really strikes you that this was, at one point, a pretty thriving community of people who had a really tough way to make a living and earn a living up here in the hills, far from anywhere. But it's been an interesting trip. The roads are fun if you have a dual sport motorcycle or a mountain bike or a four-wheel drive truck. I saw a Jeep a little while ago. The fall is really a perfect time to visit, so I hope you can get out here, and I hope you've enjoyed this little tour of one of New England's ghost towns. Thanks.